Hi there, I'm Rich Cooper with Space Foundation, and welcome to Catch Space. Literally a Catch Space type of all the activity that has been happening here at the 36th Annual Space Symposium here in Colorado Springs at the Broadmoor. It's a pleasure to have you, our virtual audience, being a part of this. Catch Space is meant to catch you up on what is happening here on the floor at the exhibit center, but the entire set of programs. I'm joined here today by Brian Berger of Space News. Both of us are going to bring a respective guest on here to talk about what their takeaways are. But as all of you know, this is the first time Space Symposium has gotten together in 18 months, and a lot has happened in the space community since then. What we have seen is a very resilient community that has continued to create jobs, create new companies, but also see a number of government organizations that have emerged not only within the United States, but around the world. Space is the big thing that is happening in today's world, whether that be the infrastructure or anything else that's happening. So, Brian, before I give my three takeaways, I'm going to start with you. I want to welcome you in Space News, who's been a longtime media partner here with Space Foundation, and we're grateful for that. Brian, what are your opening thoughts as we start this first day of Symposium?
Well, I think it's great to actually be back in person and see people other than through a Zoom screen. Although that's kind of a weird thing to say to folks who are watching this through a Zoom screen. I apologize. Hopefully we'll all be here together in person next year. But you know, I think what we took away from today was that there was, I heard a lot of saber rattling, which I thought was interesting. And it was really kind of getting to this idea of trying to deter any sort of adversaries. I think people have kind of stepped up that rhetoric from the stage, names are being named, so that's one thing that I thought was pretty interesting. There was a good presentation today from Senator Moran, was talking about his strategy for getting NASA some more money, and it doesn't all just come down to the appropriations process. There's also a chance to get into the budget reconciliation bill, this $3 trillion package that is kind of a catch-all for a lot of initiatives the Biden administration has. Mm-hmm. So he has the ability as both an appropriator and somebody in the Commerce Committee to help shepherd this through to completion. And then finally, I guess it would be the reinvigorated fight to keep Space Command in Colorado.
All of those things, and the saber rattling, I agree with all of your points. The saber rattling was interesting, particularly, again, they were naming names. There were no illusions, there were no diplomatic courtesies, right. Names were named.
Yeah.
For my three takeaways, the first thing that stood out to me was the maturity that you see for both Space Force and Space Command. Neither one of those entities is particularly old, but they are definitely aggressively moving forward with their operations, with their core competencies, even the recruitment. In a press conference earlier today, it was talked about what they're doing literally at the Air Force Academy down the road, bringing in those cadets into the Space Force, the respective roles, creating those as a new generation of warfighter. That stood out. The other piece, and this is some news that came out in the course of the program today, Space Development Agency is going to be absorbed within the Space Force. Well, that's not necessarily news, but the speed on that seems to really be picking up, and Derek Turnier, who's the director of that, laid out what was a very, very sort of aggressive schedule that he had. The other piece that stands out, and again, you see it a bit of what's around us here in this new exhibit hall, but in the other exhibit hall, the number of new companies that are here since we did this Space Symposium 18 months ago is tremendous. Again, there are a number of companies never heard, seen of before, but whether it's, as you and I have talked before, about whether it's new SPAC money, new investors, whatever it might be, there is a plethora of new space companies here, and it really does talk about the growth of that global space economy. Last point I'll make, and sorry, it's a plug here, Space Foundation, Symposium's back. It's back. We are thrilled to be here. We have a brand new exhibit center. We've expanded the program virtually to include you. We want to make sure you feel as much a part of this symposium experience. This is the 1.0 version that we're doing here for the hybrid symposium program. We'll be at 2.0 when we meet in April 2022. But again, we've got a virtual audience that we're very happy to have part of here, but Space Symposium is back. So with that, allow me to introduce my guest for today's program. I have Chelsea Gohd, who is with space.com. Chelsea, what are your takeaways from Symposium?
Well, I mean, other than it just being an incredible event, I think there are two main takeaways that I've kind of come away with. One is, for those of us that have been watching today, Space Force has had a huge presence, especially today. And I think, 18 months ago, Space Force, the idea of a Space Force was something that people were really still trying to wrap their heads around. And today, seeing Space Force, aligning with other military branches, really talking through things, really being together, being what they have described as a joint force, I think it has not only kind of shown us in the industry and in the space sector kind of how serious that collaboration is, but I think that outside of the space sector, it's going to show people that they're legitimate. It's going to continue to bolster their legitimacy. I think that in the past 18 months, the past 20 months or so, Space Force is no longer just something that is joked about on Family Guy or in pop culture. It's something that the general public is really starting to see shape up in a very tangible way.
They made no illusions that they were looking for partners.
Yeah.
And when General Raymond gave his remarks today, talked about having a summit of 23 nations.
Yeah.
And whether that is a new evolution for where the future of NATO and other types of organizations, I think you're going to be seeing something very aggressively play there. Space Force let it be known that they're here, they're serious, and they're ready to do the mission that they have been chartered to do.
Absolutely. Now, kind of the other takeaway that I've had for today, if I were just going off of the most commonly used phrase today, it would be space is hard. But I've
seen that on a bumper sticker somewhere.
Yeah, right.
Really.
Yeah,
oh,
exactly.
It's a drinking game now? Okay,
it's like American rockets from American soil. It's the new thing.
Okay.
But, kind of on that note, I just came from a LEO or a low Earth orbit panel, and I think that, people aren't just saying space is hard, but we're working towards it. I think that we're starting to see people really ask the hard questions and admit that there are problems that we don't know how yet to solve. The issue of space junk came up, and the question was asked, can you soothe everyone's minds? Can you put everyone at ease about the issue of space junk? And many of the people on stage said, we don't want to do that. We don't want to say we have it all figured out. We don't want to say the problems are fixed. We've thought about it and we've figured it out. And I think that not just seeing that, but seeing that kind of across the board from different companies at different levels of success, at different sizes, I think it is really interesting to see how seriously they're taking issues like space junk, and that they're not smoothing it over for a public audience, and that they're looking at it from a very raw, forward-facing perspective.
I can't wait to see for a future symposium when we bring in a group of insurance adjusters and actuaries to start talking about that. I think we all know the insurance agents are usually ahead of everybody else on that.
They're ready.
And I'd say they're ready. I'd say they're ready.
No, they're going to lose money this year, though.
Well,
they are. There's been enough failures, but it's not because of the LEO stuff.
We'll quote you on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Over to you.
So I've got with me today Tom Roeder from the Gazette, and
Yes.
Tom has been coming here, I think, about as long as I have. Almost as long, since 2003.
About half the length of the number of Space Symposium, so 18 for me.
There you go. So Tom pays a lot of attention to the military, right? You pay a lot of attention to the military. We know that here in Colorado it's really important to keep Space Command in Colorado, but we also know that it's a very important part of this deterrent factor we were talking about. So what are your takeaways in terms of the whole deterrent question?
So deterrence, absolutely. One of the things that we had to date, they have talked about threats from Russia and China ever since you and I have been coming to this symposium. But we had some very specifics that we are ready. That was the message from General James Dickinson today on the initial operational capability of U.S. Space Command.
Yeah.
They're ready to meet these threats in orbit head on. Mm-hmm. They say that they've got the tools they need for the moment, and more tools are coming. And we will see them really develop that fighting force to meet whatever's next in space. That was a huge takeaway today. The other one is, it's striking how much bigger space has gotten since the last time we were together.
Yeah.
If you think about this, there have been as many satellites launched since we were last together as were in orbit in 2019.
Yeah.
That's just mind-boggling to me. And the other one is just the spring in everybody's step here is just a massive takeaway. You can really feel it, especially with the companies we describe as new space, these smaller startups.
Right.
They are really ready to do some pretty special things when we look at bringing in the commercial sector for space situational awareness. And we had that discussion today about the distance between space situational awareness and domain awareness, which I think is going to take 10 years to sink in what the heck that means.
Right, and then throw cislunar in the mix too, and that gets interesting.
Absolutely. but just how much it's changed.
Yeah, I think you guys had issued a report this week talking about the global space economy and just kind of how much it's grown despite COVID. COVID has not slowed it down. There's a lot of government money, and now we're seeing a lot of private capital through SPACs. So
that is one thing, exactly. And again, when you looked at all the respective economic sectors that were obviously adversely affected by the pandemic, space grew. Space created jobs. That economy's expanded. And when we released our new space economy number in the middle of July, the number it grew, like I believe it was 4.5%, if I recall right. What we're looking at right now is a $447 billion global space economy, and on top of, and again, the whole aspiration that this is going to be a $1 trillion economy by the end of the decade. Yeah. I think it all is now. People are walking around here saying, it's going to be $1 trillion plus.
Yeah.
And people are confident about that.
Absolutely.
There's no wishy-wash there.
In Colorado, where we have a little bit of experience with gold rushes, they're calling this a gold rush. And if you look at the last year where the rest of our economy shrank, space grew by 10.3% in Colorado. It's incredible.
Be wary of booms. Be wary of booms.
We'll take it when we've got it.
When money gets to be too easy, when it falls out of trees, it kind of brings out.
It falls out of space.
Yeah.
There is a bit of concern. I know we talked about how through COVID, space has grown tremendously, but Gwen Shotwell kind of just revealed on stage, and this is something that we've kind of known and kind of seen coming for a short while, but that there are severe liquid oxygen shortages happening right now, and at least for the next few months or so, launches are going to be severely impacted. And so I don't know what that means for the long term, but in space, the long term is a few years.
Well, we've seen it with rental cars, we've seen it all over the market, but every discussion today we've had about satellites, that question comes up. Supply chain. Okay, Space Development Agency, you've got these grand plans. Where do you get your microchips?
Right.
Yeah.
And that issue came up particularly in a press conference that SDA Director Turnier had, where he talked about what were some of the shortcomings, and they were starting to see, again, a point was made that industry always wants to go faster and faster and faster, and he was, there are the fiscal realities associated with government, but there are some supply chain issues that are very much coming to bear here.
There's some concrete limitations.
Right, and I expect that those are going to be some things that we're going to see start to play out in some more of the conversations here.
It's almost to a point where we need to start seeing some expectation management on behalf of the space industry.
Well, I think we're waiting for payloads too a little bit, right? There's a little bit of some air in the pipeline. This is one of the reasons that you see SpaceX has kept busy this year launching its own satellites. Virgin Orbit's going to raise money through a SPAC, and one of the things they're talking about, a constellation, right?
Of course.
So if you don't have enough satellites to launch from customers, build them and launch them yourself. But I think Derek Turnier is going to provide some satellites for this industry. He's already put them on order, and we're just waiting for those to actually need a ride into space.
He's made no illusion of a very aggressive schedule that he has, and what is going to be very interesting is to see if industry and others and policymakers are going to keep him to that. So he has raised an expectations game there, but I think we've all seen here there has been confidence. I don't want to say swagger, but there is confidence that they are.
Depending on who, it's a little bit of swagger.
There is confidence about what they can do.
Yeah.
You heard that in their mission operations, you heard that in their mission space, you heard all of those particular things. Again, the thing that really has stood out has been everybody feeling very good about where we're going and what's going to happen next.
Yeah, and the small sat revolution has consolidated its gains. There's no doubt about that. SDA wouldn't have the architecture that it had in mind if it wasn't for how well small sats have done, proving their utility, really.
And you could even say that because we're kind of seeing that we're hitting this wall with, just not having the materials with COVID, that could even be seen as a sign of how big the small sat industry is right now and how much it's grown that we're hitting that wall with COVID.
Well, and what we're hearing, the other thing is the demand for the new Space Training and Readiness Command and the competition that's set up.
Oh yeah.
The competition that's brewing for who gets to house the Space Development Agency, and then we've already got this massive family feud over U.S. Space Command going on that has had...
Before you get to that, Air Force Secretary Kendall today talked about SDA. They have a congressional deadline of October 2022 to move it into the Air Force. He said he wanted to speed that up. So that's one little battle he's going to have to fight internally. Another one he inherited, which is the decision to move Space Command from Colorado to Huntsville, Alabama.
Absolutely.
Talk about how that fight got a little bit more interesting this week.
Well, of course, that move's never quite been popular in Colorado, but former President Donald Trump on Friday went on the syndicated radio show in Alabama, the Rick and Bubba Show, where he said that he, quote, single-handedly
Is that on
picked...
PBS?
I don't think it's C-SPAN either.
It was my first exposure to Rick and Bubba, so I'm not that familiar. But said that he single-handedly picked Huntsville, Alabama. This came ahead of a Trump rally in Alabama. There's clearly some political cachet there for Trump as he eyes 2024. But the question is, was he telling the truth, or is this just another Trumpism?
Yeah, because it contradicts what the Air Force has said. They've defended the process as being by the book. They scored everything appropriately, and it delivered the answer that moving it to Huntsville made more sense than keeping it here in Colorado. The former president upended that by saying, no, I said send it to Huntsville.
Well, if we're going just based off track record, I think we can safely bet. I'm not a betting woman, but I'd place a safe bet on that.
Yeah,
well, and
I think so too. I mean, he will take credit for things he has no business to take credit for.
Yeah.
I
think this is something we don't have to read too deeply into.
The announcement came on January 13th. Sources began telling me that Trump had pulled the trigger for Huntsville on January 11th, overruling the Pentagon.
Yeah.
And so there's a grain of truth here.
Yeah.
But how far does this take Colorado in its fight, and how far will Colorado politicians take it? Because there are some serious discussions about subpoenas about certain senior Pentagon officials who may have lied to Congress in light of Trump's
There's already OIG investigations.
Well, I want to pull that thread a little bit.
Okay.
Attended a couple press conferences today with you, Tom, where you posed that question about the future of Space Command. Now, as a beleaguered baseball fan right now who has a suffering baseball team, you had command on the pitcher's mound and threw that fastball about chin high to get their attention about where this decision was and where it was going. Where are you out on the answers? What were your evaluations of what you heard?
They fouled off the pitches very effectively. They're quite well trained and good at it. But what was fascinating is what they didn't say. The earlier statements of we have confidence in this process, that we believe in what happened, those are gone. Nobody was singing Sweet Home Alabama today.
Who signed off on this? Who was the most senior official who signed off on this decision?
That would be the former Secretary of the Air Force, whose name escapes me.
Barbara Barrett?
Barbara Barrett, absolutely. And
how long she stuck around after that decision?
She left immediately, and they put out an assistant undersecretary for installations to take all the heat.
Baptism by fire.
And so that was truly unfun when he came to town. But we'll see. Kendall obviously has the power to reverse this. Will he do it? Don't know.
So let's look to tomorrow, the next day of the Space Symposium. Excuse me. What are you looking forward to, Tom, and what do you think you're going to see? What do you want to see out of tomorrow's program?
I really, really want to hear more about this growth. Is it sustainable? Will we keep this going forward? And also, how real is the administration's commitment to the moon and Mars? We've heard them talk about it. We heard the NASA director today say moon and Mars, we're all about it. But at some point, they're broke. And so the dollars and the vision aren't adding up.
Chelsea, what are you looking for tomorrow?
I'm really looking forward to the Life's Origins panel. Dr. Turtle, talking about missions like Dragonfly and missions that really showcase the science side of space in such an exciting way, in such a way that people can get interested in easily, and I just really am looking forward to it.
Me?
Yeah.
Getting the third or fourth show daily done. That's what we've been doing here.
And speaking of those show dailies, there's great coverage that you're seeing on space.com, certainly the Gazette and Space News. Brian and his team put out a daily every day here at the Space Symposium. Don't know how you do it. I don't know how you do it and still have all of that hair. But Brian and his team do a fabulous job of putting out those dailies. And where can they get those online?
We're going to actually send them out next week on Monday. We're going to send them out by email to all the subscribers on our newsletter subscriber list. So if you're not on it, get on it. You can find out how to do that at Space News.
There is great coverage from all three of these really great reporters and these great media outlets, which we are fortunate here at Space Symposium to host. In fact, the last count I saw from my media team, we have, I believe, over 140, maybe close to 150 different media organizations, both in person and virtual. That's a record for us. Again, this symposium is a record breaker for us in a number of ways, but I'm particularly proud of the team that I've got that we've assembled and being able to, I will say, feed the respective media beasts that are out there asking for all of these questions, asking all of these things. And again, that's what gives you the information to know what's happening in your space economy and in your space ecosystem. So a closing thought. We will be back here tomorrow for Catch Space. Brian and I will bring on additional guests to talk about their observations of what they've seen. But I want to give you a takeaway of what happened last night at the opening ceremony. We gave a number of awards to some very deserving individuals and organizations. It was a very powerful moment, and we put a lot of that out there on social media for you to see, including some of the quick video clips that we had for each of the award honorees. But I want to talk about one honoree in particular. Last night we hosted the family of Patty Grace Smith. Patty Grace Smith was this year's Hill Award winner, and it was a posthumous award. So with a great film that was done by Space City Films, it chronicled her life and breaking barriers when she was growing up, but then what she did in the career. Her career at the FAA and also previously at the Department of Transportation allowed a lot of what is happening around here to happen, and very much was a pioneer for the commercial space industry. I had the fortune of taking her son, Gene Smith, around. Now, Gene is 6 foot, way tall, very impressive, imposing young man. He gave a wonderful tribute to his mom last night that was very moving. And as he said, I didn't know all of these things about her. She was just my mom. But the part that was the takeaway I want to share with you is, as I took Gene around here to see all of these exhibits, there were 3 different people that came up that didn't know me, didn't know Gene, but came up, and each one of them did the same thing. They put up their hand, shook his hand, and they said, my company is here today because of your mom. I can't think of a better legacy for a Hill Award winner to be able to have to see all of this that's going on around here. So to learn more about Patty Grace Smith, take a look at the Space Foundation's homepage where we've got the video on her, but we will also be looking for a future Hill Award winner, and we invite you, our virtual audience, as we invite everybody around here, to give us the feedback on who we should be honoring next. And with that, to our virtual audience, I say thank you for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow on Catch Space, and we hope that you'll join us with Space Symposium, not only tomorrow, but going forward. Have a great day.